we've been getting a number of stories like this recently about how the far right of the Republican Party is more openly embracing Christian nationalism. Some of them are going as far as to embrace, like, white nationalism, but Christian nationalism is now sort of evolving from just the fringe of the right to a really, really sizable portion, man. A majority, in fact. So this is really not a good development. So let's go ahead and take a look at this here from Politico. Christian nationalism, a belief that the United States was founded as a white Christian nation and that there is no separation between church and state, is gaining steam on the right. Prominent Republican politicians have made the themes critical to their message to voters in the run-up to the 2022 midterm elections. Doug Mastriano, the Republican nominee for governor in Pennsylvania, has argued that America is a Christian nation and that the separation of church and state is a, quote, myth. All right, let me just pause here to tell you guys, those words, separation of church and state, came directly from Thomas Jefferson in a letter that he wrote at the time. Of course, the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment is what is interpreted as separation of church and state, because that is the most straightforward, reasonable interpretation of the language. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Georgia hardliner, declared, "We need to be the party of nationalism, and I'm a Christian, and I say proudly, we should be Christian nationalists." Amid a backlash, she doubled down and announced she would start selling Christian nationalist shirts. Now Florida Governor Ron DeSantis seems to be flirting with Christian nationalist rhetoric as well. Okay, so understand something, guys. When they say they're Christian nationalists, what do they mean by that? Like, what does that entail? Well, the answer is very simple. It entails extreme social conservatism that is forced on the entire country. So that could show up in the form of abortion banned in all 50 states. That's something that we know they want. That could show up in gay marriage being banned in all 50 states. That could show up in the form of various other forms of LGBTQ discrimination. This is what they mean. It is more about a conservative, restrictive, primitive social issues set that they enforce on the country. That's what they want. So fundamentally what it is anti-freedom. That's what it is. That's what their position is. They want to take away your social freedoms. You know, obviously other things like heightening the drug war. That's another thing that they support. And this is all under the banner of Christian nationalism. So a lot of it doesn't even have to do with the doctrine of Christianity. A lot of it is just, how could we be far-right, conservative Republican assholes and enforce that on the rest of the country? Appeals to Christian nationalism have a long tradition in American history, though they have usually operated on the fringes, but the increasingly mainstream appearance of this belief in GOP circles makes sense if you look at new public opinion surveys. Our new University of Maryland Critical Issues poll suggests that declaring the United States a Christian nation is a message that could be broadly embraced by Republicans in the midterms and 2024 presidential race. But our findings also see limits to its appeal, and over the long term, Christian nationalism could be a political loser. Most Republicans say Christian nationalism is unconstitutional, but still support it. Our national poll included 2,091 participants, carried out May 6th to May 16th, 2022, with a margin of error of plus and minus 2.14%. So here are the results. We started by asking participants if they believe the Constitution would even allow the United States government to declare the U.S. a Christian nation. We found that 70% of Americans, including 57% of Republicans and 81% of Democrats, said that the Constitution would not allow such a declaration. Indeed, the First Amendment says Congress can neither establish nor prohibit the practice of religion. So here are the numbers on that one. Everybody kind of acknowledges and realizes that it would be unconstitutional to have a Christian nation. But now look at this. We followed up by asking, would you favor or oppose the United States officially declaring the United States to be a Christian nation? The findings were striking. Overall, 62% of respondents said they opposed such a declaration, including 83% of Democrats and 39% of Republicans. Fully 61% of Republicans supported declaring the United States a Christian nation. In other words, even though over half of Republicans previously said such a move would be unconstitutional, a majority of GOP voters would still support this declaration. That's astonishing. A strong majority of Republicans think we should be a Christian nation, even though we are a deeply secular nation. And it just adds another layer that they agree it's unconstitutional. That is wild, man. That is wild. So, look, I don't want to hear any, like, constitution humping from the right, because this is something they do all the time. They pretend like, oh, Democrats and the left, they're so against the Constitution, and that's un-American. Well, by your own standard, you're pretty goddamn un-American. If you want to use that standard, you fail according to, your own logic here. So this is wild. And they continue and say, Christian nationalism gaining steam on the right. Percentage of respondents in favor or opposed to declaring the U.S. a Christian nation. And then again, you could say only 17% of Democrats wanted the U.S. to be a Christian nation. 61% of Republicans did. Look, this should terrify you, because this is at a time when the world is becoming more and more secular, and you could debate as to why that is. I mean, I think one of the reasons is the increase of science and technology, and it's kind of hard to hold on to myths when you have all the knowledge in the world available at your fingertips by your smartphone at any given time. So it could be that. There could be other reasons that people are becoming more secular, but at a time when knowledge is more widely available than ever before, there's now this, like, surge in clinging to old school doctrines and very falsifiable belief sets. And it's wild, man. Like I said, you have to think of this more as like a cultural movement or a cult now than you do a religion, because it's more about a doctrinaire set of far-right policies in the social realm. That's what these people mean when they say, I want to be Christian nationalists. So it ain't good, man. It ain't a good look. It's a very, very scary thing. And amazingly, we're going to have to fight the same battle that we were fighting in the 1950s, in the 1980s, the rise of the religious right with Pat Robertson, for example. Looks like that same battle is coming back. And it's kind of amazing because everybody thought it was very easily defeated previously and that these things would never have a resurgence. But look, I mean, everybody thought after 2015, well, gay marriage is now settled. And 70% of the country says, hey, this is settled. But no, we just had 157 elected Republicans in the House of Representatives vote against gay marriage. So this stuff is just latent. It's just underneath the surface. There's still people who cling to preposterous beliefs and want to enforce them on everybody else. So, not a good situation. Be prepared to battle it back and, don't be afraid to speak up in favor of secularism, because it is definitely the only path to basic, solid governance.